Welcome to today's violin lesson. My name is Eric and I'm going to share my experience on how to help you play with a straight bow. There are a lot of advantages to playing with a straight bow, but let's answer the question why you should play with a straight bow in the first place. Because you may see violinists around playing with crooked bows. Well, that is at a next level type bow usage, and we're not going to talk about that. We're talking about for the everyday person who is learning how to play the violin for fun as a hobby or as an amateur, and you just want to get a good sound from the very beginning. And that's where this idea of a straight bow comes into play. I always break down violin problems into two categories, a left hand problem or a right hand problem. And when we're dealing with the bow, it is primarily a right hand problem. But stick around to the end of the video where I'm going to actually demonstrate why it could potentially be a left hand problem with a crooked bow. There are two ways to have a crooked bow from what I've seen in my violin students. You could either go this way or this way. Typically, when I see students go down bow, they end up going over the fingerboard. And that is a result of the elbow pushing the bow backwards. As you can see, my elbow right over here is going backwards, and I'm not learning how to extend my right forearm. Now, this is an unusual feeling because I explain to my students that as humans, we're so used to grabbing things this way or picking things up this way, either, wrist down or wrist up. Very rarely do we go from the side to get something this way. And a lot of times students are uncomfortable with this feeling because they feel a little bit of a muscle tension, like a muscle pull between the forearm and the bicep. So having a stable right forearm is going to be key to having a straight bow. Because when I'm doing a down bow, for instance, I do a down bow, I am moving my right elbow a little bit forward and backward, but the point of it is that when I go to middle bow, I extend the forearm, and that's the biggest issue that I see with students. So if I'm doing a down bow and I maintain this right arm position and I pull my bow backwards, you can see the disadvantage of this. When I do an up bow, I automatically get into this runner's arm over here and my bow slides all over the place. So if I'm doing a down bow, I set up really well. I want to extend that forearm this way. And I also want to make sure I have a good grip of the bow when I do an up bow. And that's an easy exercise for you to do what I just demonstrated. So if you have your violin with you, I encourage you to join me for this exercise. It's a simple staccato exercise that helps distribute your bow in halves and quarters and eighths or in sixths. So for instance, if I'm practicing a straight bow, I do a half bow, I make sure I maintain contact with the middle bow. And then I extend. I extend all the way as much as I can, and I happen to have longer arms, so I'm not going to be going completely straight. There may be a few of you who have shorter arms that this may be an exception. So you may not be able to get to the tip. I have seen many students who don't have long arms. They try to go all the way to the tip, but in order to get to the tip, they move their arm back. Definitely don't want to do that. If your arm does not go all the way, then don't do that. Like if you go right below the tip over here, that's fine. As long as you are having a straight bow, then you are in good condition. Another element with the right hand is having bent fingers. Having bent fingers will enable you to be more fluid and flexible with the bow. So this is primarily in regards to bow changes when you're doing down bow and up bow. So if I'm doing a legato bow stroke, you can see my fingers are really working this way. Now, you may be a beginner and you're not at that level yet where you're able to move the fingers up and down this way. And you might just be at this static position. That's absolutely fine. If you're able to have bent fingers, particularly a bent pinky and a bent thumb this way, then all power to you. Now, what I just demonstrated, don't hold the bow horizontally unless you have really mastered it, because there's a lot of weight that happens at the tip. If you're practicing your bow hold, practice vertically. I've talked about this on my channel a lot of times, where you are able to practice your bow hold more effectively when the bow is vertical, just because the bow is not heavy. It's not heavier. And kind of a side note, I have a video on this very topic when it comes to a bow stroke called coller. I did a live stream a long time ago on the topic of coller, and coller in French means glue. So this is really important to know when you're going to be advancing towards other bow strokes, particularly sautille, spiccato. Having bent fingers will enable you to do those bow strokes more effectively and more efficiently. So if I'm doing, this is coller, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. Eventually, that'll translate to having the fingers really move up and down this way. The next thing you should be thinking about is the knuckles on the right hand. Are the knuckles on the right hand, I should say. So if you are up here, which I see oftentimes a lot of students go this way, so they actually don't have a good tone. They don't have a good sound. So bringing the knuckles down this way enable you to have a more friction of the string and the bow. And that'll prevent you from slipping around the violin string this way. And of course, I've always talked about this. You do that unless the composer asks you to in a piece of music. But in your situation, with your violin, try that right now. Try your violin up. Try to get the knuckles down, the fingers bent, and try to go to the middle bow and then extend with the staccato. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that there could potentially be a fix with the left hand, and that all comes back to posture. There are different schoolings of this when it comes to posture. I am of the belief that I want to be able to hold my violin as efficiently as possible up here. And this is one way to have a perpendicular setting of the string. If I do a long bow, I don't have to move my violin left and right. Now you can see that if my violin is too far to the left, my bow, without even having to move my arm, gets crooked. And on the contrary, if my violin is too far in, you can see that my bow is also going the opposite way. So talk to your teacher, talk to your instructor on how you can tackle that issue, because that'll help enable you to have better sound, a straighter bow, and that'll help you enable more musicality in your playing. But if you want to learn more about different bow techniques, I have a whole video right over here. And if you like this video, thanks so much for watching to the end. Hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.